I've done videos in the past about small housing and vernacular architecture, traditional against interregional architecture and so forth. But architecture being one of the main points about my channel, I've not really done that many videos about it. So today I'm going to tackle one of the things I'm most enthusiastic about within architecture. What is the role of architecture? Now, if you want a 10-second description of it, is architecture's role is to fulfill the wants and needs of an individual or society, mostly about society. That's pretty much it. If you want to stop the video, stop it now. Otherwise, I'm going to develop about that. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. Now, I'm going to talk about the past, the present, and what my particular opinions about this is. Now, the first building typology, I believe, tended to be the house. Even if it's in natural structures such as caves, one of the first things that people wanted was essentially a place to live in. Once they become sedentary, anyway. A place where they could rest, where they could gather together, where they could store and cook food, etc., etc. It was a place to live in. Now, as culture was developed, there was a shift towards different aspects of society, nationalism, military expansionism, the arts, showing that how you have power, money, culture. But one of the most relevant ones is religion. Religion, after all, gives faith to many people, gives them hope and ideals, and the way they should live their lives. So obviously, society is was very much dependent on what religion was about. And in fact, many cities and towns and settlements of different kinds basically grew around the main religious building of the region. Churches, cathedrals, mosques, temples of different religions, the pyramids, step pyramids of Mesoamerica. Most societies tend to grow around these. And in fact, many people actually lived in what was technically belonged to the religion. For instance, Angkor Wat in Cambodia, even though it was fairly large, it's actually the largest religious structure, if I'm not wrong. People lived in there. You know, it was not only about religion; it was actually living in there, which I suppose was one of the main points about different. Anyway, religion was really relevant for a long time. Now, Western tradition and around the world, there was also different movements. Western tradition, there was a little shift away from that during the Renaissance. Protestantism, for one, basically broke off the church again into Catholics and Protestants. There was also the Anglicans, which kind of struggled between the two. And there was also more of a focus on what the individual was because of Renaissance. Religion was still extremely important, but it became more about actual individuals and nations as opposed to just the church. Now, after the Napoleonic Wars, and actually before that even, there was a move towards more nationalistic political forms, which obviously would again modify the architecture. Many people looked at the past to kind of inspire what the buildings would be about. Again, why I believe Victorian architecture was actually really representative of Victorian England is that people were looking at the past for ideals. So obviously the buildings naturally would be inspired by those eras as well. Gothic architecture happened to be one of the biggest ones because religion was becoming a much bigger thing. It's quite easy, really. Now, 20th century, what happens? A lot of new thought philosophers, a lot of really great wars, well, great in the sense of really big wars, including the two world wars, and many different social movements, independence movements, social revolutions, feminism movements, movements against black oppression. There was a lot of things going on during the 20th century that completely changed what society was about. Late 20th, like the start of the 20th century was nothing like the end of the 20th century. Even the middle of the 20th century was nothing like the beginning. 20th America and 30th America, completely different eras, completely different societies. Well, not completely different, but really different. Because they had realized that economy could crash. Now, the present. what are we dealing with architecturally? I would believe there's three main topics that architecture deals with um, around the world at this very moment in terms of more modern architecture. The first of which is the biggest, tallest, highest, widest building of the world. The Burj Khalifa, for instance, in the United Arab Emirates, tallest building in the world. That's the main purpose of it, for it to be the tallest building in the world. And I say this really without any sort of enthusiasm, because even though it has architectural merit to construct such a high thing, it's a really shallow reason to make a building. It's not about what society wants. It's about making publicity for your nation. It's brought a lot of tourism, indeed, a lot of commerce, really good things for the countries, really. But all of that money could have be spent in different ways. Make the building, I don't know, 500 meters shorter. You would have probably a couple million dollars, euros, pounds, whatever. You would have quite a lot of money that you could have spent on other things, such as feeding your people. I feel that making the XS building in the world is kind of a shallow reason for making a building, but fair enough. Fair enough. I'm not going to say that I'm against it. It's just I find it's the less honourable reason of the three I'm going to present. The second is very widespread environmental issues. Smaller footprint buildings, smaller buildings overall, less materials that are recyclable, materials that absorb CO2, the passive house ideals, houses that have green roofs, that are dug under earth, and so on. Architecture dealing with environmentalism, I believe, is one of the most important things that of our era, because we live in a capitalist consumer society, which, even though it's really comforting to know that you can get anything if you have money for it, at the same time it produces a lot of waste, which is bad for the planet. Lastly, we have buildings that revolve about the idea of cultural revivals. Thankfully, there's movements reviving the traditional forms of architecture, not necessarily copying them, but so much as learning from them. For instance, Middle East, you can learn different things about how to deal with really hot, dry environments. For instance, the wind towers of Persia, well, Iran nowadays, but still. In the north, why did they have these really dark or really vibrant colored buildings? Because it makes the building absorb more of the sun's rays, therefore making it warmer. Hence why many of the houses in the north of Europe tend to be dark colors or really vibrant colors instead of white that would be typical in, say, the Mediterranean. So those are the main three topics, and obviously you could already tell of the first one I'm not particularly all that bothered, but the second two I've actually addressed in this channel. The tiny house video was completely about the idea of environmental issues, and traditional architecture, it kind of straddles between the two. Now, what is my belief architecture should be about? Now, my general idea is that architecture should respond to the needs and wants of the individual or society. Now, individuals will have their own particular needs, because it's not the same to design a house for a couple than it is for a non-nuclear family than it is to make a skyscraper for a CEO of a really big company, obviously. But what it should be for society as a general kind of trend, in my belief, is to make society better. Nations have become much more focused and making their countries powerful and making them famous around the world, having more tourism, more money, more military power, more diplomatic power around the world, and that's all good and fine. I'm not gonna argue against it, because sincerely, I'm not gonna make this video right now about those topics. I might do in the future, but still, my belief is nations should make lives of people in them better. How do we do this? Better education, better health system, good nutrition, social awareness, respect, acceptance. There's many different topics that society can deal with. And my belief is that we shouldn't be focusing so much in things such as money, which in the end of the day just will change value. You know, one form of currency drops, another one inflates, so on. You know, money at the end of the day is not gonna make you happy. It's what we spend the money which makes us happy. So if we become less reliant on money, overall we can become happier and more kind of realistic trend by providing more again cheaper houses that are actually done with environmental issues in mind, cultural issues as well, but as well as the social dimension of it. Because one of the major problems that society is dealing with over time is social issues. People are becoming more solitary, they're living more alone, or they're more stressed and there's anxiety. Recently in North America and Europe, there's been a rise of nationalistic movements, and while the idea of patriotism is something that I'm not against, I actually encourage it to kind of, you know, be happy about living in the country you are in. I'm against nationalism when it turns to violence and hatred and just ideologies that are going to hurt society. It's going to create hatred and violence. So my belief is that architecture should encourage a healthier way of living. This is in the way it's built, what kind of social interactions it creates, what footprint does it have? Does it make the people that live or use these buildings happy? You know, there are some countries around the world which have started looking at issues like this. Denmark has been voted as the happiest country in Earth for quite a few times. Bhutan has provided electricity for farmers so they don't have to use petrol for their farming tools. And there's also survey. I'm not sure entirely when they do it, but I think each year to see how happy people are, and they have a minister of happiness. You know, that is a great society development there. I'm not saying that Bhutan is the greatest nation on earth, or Denmark, or anywhere, but if nations want to focus on anything, it's making the societies better. And how you make the societies better is to make people's lives better, happier, healthier. Because we as humans gather together to kind of cover for the weaknesses of the other and basically make lives better. You know, to be completely independent, to be able to do everything you want, you know, it's completely fine. But if you have someone that can dedicate to gathering food, another one to grow in it, another one to cook in it, another one to actually serve in it, people that construct, people that do art, people that do entertainment, we currently live in a society where people are becoming less independent in that sense, because no longer can people make their own houses, particularly because of law regulations and so on. But we are losing many of these skills. But it's not because we are losing them all. It's just because people are becoming specialized in these areas, which is something a little bit dangerous to some extent, because then people in extreme situations don't know really what to do in some areas. But still, that is a topic for another day. However, I believe it's we as humans gather together because it makes us happier. Quite easily. It can be small societies, it can be a village, it can be a bigger, it can be a town, it can be huge, it can be a city the size of New York or Hong Kong or any major city really from different areas in the world. But we gather as humans to have a better life. Even if it's just a family, you know, each one of you covers kind of an area that the other one doesn't. The father may be good at constructing things, the mother is probably better dealing with household economy, the children are better at dealing with mathematics and arts. You know, we as humans gather together because it makes us happy. And nations should completely encourage this because we're becoming more isolated, less healthy, less educated, less happy overall. You know, nations should be about making people happy. I know it's not as easy as it sounds. There's war and diplomacy and racial issues and discrimination everywhere. You know, that are things that we need to deal with actively. But the most important thing is those, not the economy of your country. People with little money can be really happy. but you need to encourage them to make them happy, and architecture should reflect this. So my belief, architecture should be built to make a better world and a better society for us to live in. That is all. I'll see you next video.